greetings. My name is Moishe, Mohel, Moyle, Menachem, Goldstein, Silverberg, Platinumowitz, war reporter for the Jewish Telegraph Agency. I come to you from a smoldering pile of rubble here at what used to be UCLA, my dear mother-in-law's alma mater. The scenes I saw the previous night on this campus, where once did our youth flourish and frolic, were nothing short of apocalyptic. I saw brutal 19-year-olds thrusting their heads into the innocent nightclubs, or nightsticks, however you call it, of our youthful officers in the LAPD. The previous night, these students, who appear to have only learned two things, Jewish hatred and pronouns, seems to have viciously flung themselves at a group of our virile Persian Jewish youthful 40-year-old men. Now, I am somebody who is known to be fastidiously neat, often at the expense of personal relationships. I am also, I admit, handsy. But the blood that these students spilled on our precious flagstones and floor of this campus, to which my grandfather, Warner Brother himself, donated $200 billion, is extraordinary. Now, thankfully, these students are locked up. And now as I stand here against the smoldering ruins like so much incense out of a brazier, I am left to wonder, why did you do this? Why do you not care for us? Haven't we given you ways? Perhaps if you get Me Too'd, you can move to Tel Aviv? I don't understand the hatred that these young students have for us. All I've tried to do is get them fired, beaten, and kicked out of school and blacklisted from ever getting a job again. And yet still you disrespect me? Well, I appear to be late for my weekly moiling appointment. It's like a...
Don't explain it.
I don't know. Well, I can explain it a little bit.
No,
My penis regrows its foreskin, much like Wolverine in the X-Men's ability to heal himself, except only it exists in my schmeckle.
That's not...
They call me the whitefish.
No one calls you that.
They do call me the whitefish. It's small, it's wet, it's white, it stinks. Signing off.
Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein.
Terrible.
I can do a whole podcast episode
No,
like that.
you can't.
Yes,
You
I
can't.
could. I mean, I won't. No. I could. Hugh won't let me.
Who's he?
No, Hugh. I just said Hugh in an insulting way to you.
Oh, I thought you meant G-D.
Are you wearing a beret?
I am.
That's cool.
Is it? I was hoping it was like, I was hoping it was a little more like Basquiat, but I think it's a little Emily in Paris.
Are you trying to look like Basquiat?
No, just that era.
Because when I tried to look like Basquiat, people got really fucking mad at me. And
Maybe it's because you say it like that.
Well, I was going to Coachella. I wanted to see Billie Eilish. And yes, I dressed partially like Basquiat, except for the clothes and the hair. And the viral videos that came out of that fucking ruined my career.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Liz.
My name is Braze. We are, of course, joined by producer Young Chomsky. TrueAnon's very own, nope, not going to say that.
What were you gonna say?
TrueAnon's very own Puff Daddy, but then I was like, that's just
That
mean
doesn't
to
work
say. Well,
at
it does
all.
work, but it doesn't work for him, and it's just a mean thing to say. I was just talking, and sometimes when I talk, I don't stop saying
I feel
stuff.
like we should not.
Hello.
Hello. It's TrueAnon. Welcome.
We have a lot to fucking talk about today.
Yeah. We were gonna do a different episode.
We were going to do a rather easy episode.
What do you mean easy? What episodes are easy?
The one, I guess that's true. All of our episodes are really hard.
We were going to do the one where we kind of sit back and listen to some tips that we heard from our listeners. We're still going to do that because people have been calling in to the tip line, even without us knowing it, really, and saying some crazy ass shit.
But I do think, actually, we should say this now. I do think we're going to do the tip line episode next Friday. We're going to record it next Friday. So if you do have a juicy tip, I don't remember the number. I can see Young Chomsky going to find it right now. But
Do you have it in front of you?
I got a juicy tip for you.
Ew.
come on. Okay, so
Maybe the Puff
I
Daddy
take
thing was
back
right.
the taking back the Puff Daddy thing.
It is 646-801-1129. That's 646-801-1129.
That's nice.
That is the tip line number. Please call that and leave a tip just as a forewarning. And in case you haven't realized this already by listening to our last one, we are going to play some of these tips on the air. So
Unless it's super juicy and you want us, we can go distorto mode
Yes.
on your voice and do something very cool.
But if you don't need to do that.
I know, but wouldn't it be funny if they're like, oh, that means they're going to make me sound like real tough, real cool, but then we put it in like AI voice and it's like,
Yeah, it just gives them baby voice.
yeah, that would be a funny little flip.
It's good they don't let babies, like God doesn't let babies talk until they have because imagine how baby voice a baby would have when it just came out and it started talking. You'd have a hard time taking it seriously. Well, a lot's going on this week.
Jesus. It's true though. So here's the thing. We were going to do that episode. And then the NYPD stormed the castle.
In fact, last week, or this week, actually. In fact, I'm so fucked up with the days that I missed an appointment yesterday because I didn't realize it was Thursday.
That's why you got to keep a personal calendar.
I do, but I just don't look at it because
Well, that's part of keeping the
gives
calendar.
I don't like it.
What day is it?
It's Friday today. It's Friday, May 3rd. So on Tuesday, after we finished recording, I had to go do something, but I was getting all these texts from a friend of the show, Nico Walker. He's like, I'm going up to Columbia. I was there earlier today, and as I was on my way back, I saw a bunch of SWAT vehicles heading up there.
Yeah. I was in Penn Station. It was a crazy amount of people screaming, chanting, waving flags, little drums session, clearly on their way uptown.
They were drumming in transit.
In transit. In the station. And a really, really aggressively middle-class gay man screamed, "Nobody likes you."
That happens to me. You have no idea how often that happens to me, Liz.
And I was like, babe, no one likes you.
Yeah, facts. Especially middle-aged.
No, middle class.
Middle class, okay.
Yeah.
Well, everyone gets older.
Unfortunately.
But I can't resist checking out what's going on. I got some friends over there. I want to see what's going on. And so I went up there to Columbia, and it was, I'm sure many people saw it on the news. I was not obviously on the campus. The campus had been locked down. But I've never seen so many cops in my fucking life. They had all of Amsterdam blocked off, every street fenced off. Thousands of police must have been there. And when I got there around 9 o'clock, they were frog marching students down, or arrested students down the center of the street, it was really crazy looking because there was crowds, like large crowds at every intersection, because you could go up to the intersection, but you just couldn't go down Amsterdam. And so there was large crowds booing the police and cheering on the protesters. But they just kind of marched them down one by one in like this like staggered way that it almost seemed like they were parading them. Then processed them for a while, but you could see those must have been students they got from the encampment, because you could see down the street the giant police vehicle and the ramp that they famously used to get into to the hall where the students were
Right, when they were
holed
all
up.
lined up like
With
little
their
lemmings.
guns drawn.
Little lemmings with little pistols.
And in the course of Columbia protecting its students and keeping them safe, a bunch of psychotic members of the NYPD busted into the occupied hall, fired a gun, flew through flashbangs, pushed. Have you seen the video of the student getting pushed down the stairs?
Yeah.
It's insane, like Looney Tunes style. Looney Tunes style violence against students.
But
and
not
then-
cartoonish because people were hurt.
Yeah.
'Cause
But
in cartoon world, it's fake.
ended up arresting
So we're clear.
hundreds of people across Columbia and CUNY.
Yeah, just real quick on that gun, the gun moment. I don't want to be one of, sometimes I really hate, you see this stuff online and people are like, oh, the way they use the passive voice is so annoying, talking about the way that this stuff is reported
Yeah.
or talked about. But I really do need to read this. This is how the New York Times reported, which it took like the NYPD like 2 days to come out and actually say that one of their officers had fired a gun, even though like rumors about it and even, we're all going around Twitter at the time, right?
Yeah.
People were saying this was happening. This is the way the New York Times reported it. The NYPD gave some details on a gunshot that had been fired on Tuesday night inside Hamilton Hall at Columbia and said it was accidental. So, wait, I'm going to keep going. As police cleared the building, an officer was trying to access a barricaded area on the first floor when the gun, which had a flashlight on it, fired. The police said in a statement.
Interesting.
No one was injured, the NYPD said, and the bullet ended up in a frame of a wall a few feet away. So a gunshot that had been fired, the gun fired, and then the bullet ended up in the wall. No idea how or who fired the gun or if it was the gun that fired itself.
Very
all of those
likely.
things. There was, at the same time, like that night when this was going on, on Twitter, there was someone who, and it almost like, it was so... You're going to hear this from me a lot, but we are reaching hysterical levels of absurdity that
Yes.
feel like it feels like fake news, and yet it's not.
Yes.
Right? But there was someone who caught an NYPD officer on, texting his fucking buddy.
His buddy named Sal, which is also why when I first saw it, I was like, this
on.
has to be fake.
That has to be fake, but it wasn't. It was like, and it was on like Telegram or whatever.
Signal,
yeah. And he literally types, thought we fucking shot someone, which is insane. But this is not getting as much play, but the message that he was responding to in the text thread was, wow, they never use those. Which I just want to say. So Sal, the police officer, was saying to his buddy that whatever he was referring to, whatever weapon the NYPD had deployed that he was talking about, he said, wow, they never use those. And in response, yeah, we thought we shot someone.
Yeah, I wonder what that is in response to.
I don't know how they thought they shot someone when a gun fired.
I mean, the gun
fired.
fired itself.
Yeah.
Listen, as somebody who has shot a gun both at walls, at people, and at targets, one of the main things that causes a gun to go off, in fact, unless it's a really shitty, cheap gun, which I don't think that the NYPD, which is the budget of like Luxembourg, has shitty guns. But one of the main things that you need for a gun to shoot a bullet is to to take the safety off and then to depress the trigger with your finger.
Right.
Now, it could have gotten caught in his holster if he was drawing it, but it seems like the mention of the flashlight, he might have been using it as a flashlight, which, give me a fucking break. Cops have giant-ass flashlights, which they use to beat people with. So, like, why weren't you just using one of those? So, like, he was either, like, pointing his gun around and just, like, pressed and had his fucking finger on the trigger. In fact, I can't really think of another explanation than that. He pulled the trigger on the gun.
I got to say that the text message to Sal does not convey that
No.
sort of sensibility. I want to say just real fast that in response to this, by the way, this, like, the police coming in, now we know, firing a fucking gun in Columbia Hall. The president of Columbia said, I thank the NYPD for their incredible professionalism and support.
Yeah.
So just want to put that out there.
Yeah, and there was a lot of chest beating going on from the really malformed-looking officers who were lining the streets. It was interesting. I felt a little bit like it was a Twilight Zone episode where, like, a guy gets picked up from the regular world and then taken to some kind of fucked up, grotesque monster world. And it was almost like the statuaries,
Interesting.
like me walking into the great hall of the Monster King. Because there was all these fucked up, weird, angular, but then also magnificently rotund officers standing there. I saw one doing what I can only describe as stimming. Now some people might be saying, I don't see anything wrong with that. And I understand that. You are a 30-year-old computer programmer who lives with your parents. This is a guy who is supposed to be able to beat the fuck out of me. And he's nervous and stimming.
I gotta be real. I really don't know what that is.
It's like, remember fidget spinners?
Oh yeah.
It's like guys who need those do that. It's like,
But that's just like fun little toy.
it's a whole other the people will know what I'm talking about. We gotta back up a little bit. I don't know if we have to, but we're gonna back up a little bit here. I want people to keep in mind that everything that we're going to talk about in this episode is taking place with a Gaza that is completely or almost completely destroyed. Tens of thousands of people dead. The looming invasion of Rafah, famine threatening to break out, lack of food, sanitary, anything, the lack of medicine, no schools, no hospitals, no infrastructure.
Yeah.
People are living in tents, and they're still they just yesterday it was announced that Israel had killed, or let's just say this, a sort of famous Gazan professor who was also a surgeon had died in Israeli custody after being there for 4 months. I mean, this is a brutal military assault, and this is what these encampments are protesting. But it might be illegal to protest Israel fairly soon. Liz, are you familiar with the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism?
I am, because it's the thing that the Labor Party famously weaponized to take down Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes.
As an anti-Semite.
Yes. I think that it kind of came to prominence for a lot of people. It's been used by various governments in various ways for a while now. But I think a lot of people on the left who maybe didn't pay that close attention to this stuff learned what it was when it was pretty successfully used to end Jeremy Corbyn's political career in many ways.
So the House of Representatives, they overwhelmingly passed a bill that would now expand the definition of anti-Semitism. This is very clearly a reaction to the protests on campus. It would codify the definition of anti-Semitism created by the IHRA, we'll talk about what that is in a second, into Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, right? Now, that's the Civil Rights Act that says that there can be no discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, et cetera, under any program that receives federal funding. What that means is public schools, campuses, college campuses. That's what they're targeting. So the bill is called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act of 2023, AAA. Funny enough, back in 2019, Trump passed an executive order directing federal agencies to consider. I love executive orders where they're just like, this is just me giving you a directive. Yeah. But they're actually quite important.
Yeah.
And it is kind of how bureaucracies take direction. But this would basically codify Trump's executive order into law.
So the State Department has actually adopted this definition, has been using it for a while. Biden, et cetera, like people do use this definition, but I don't believe the Department of Education has actually adopted it yet, which it seems like this bill is aimed at.
Okay, let's talk about the actual definition, right? Mm-hmm. A certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews, rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
Then,
sounds all right.
This includes targeting the state of Israel conceived as a Jewish collectivity. So it's collapsing these two into one.
Well, let's parse out what that means a little bit. The state of Israel conceived as a Jewish collectivity. So the state of Israel conceives of itself as a Jewish collectivity. That means a Jewish majority state where Judaism is essentially the state religion, where basically comporting to the nation-state law that Israel very controversially passed a few years ago.
Yeah, it goes on. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, e.g. by claiming the existence of a state of Israel, is a racist endeavor. Drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of Nazis. All of that would be banned or would be, considered anti-Semitic under this definition.
Yeah.
Now, the bill itself is insanely weird. It's kooky. I would call it roughshod.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems like a very quick dash of the pen.
I read through it and I was a bit I thought it would be like there would be something a little more to it, but it doesn't really seem like it.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't even literally list the definition of anti-Semitism in the bill. Like, it doesn't list what it would codify into law. It directs you to a website, and then it says, like, that link is what will be enshrined into law, into the Civil Rights Act, right? But it's like, what part of the website? What happens if the website changes? Like, all of these things, it makes absolutely no sense. And that's not even talking about how controversial the definition is itself.
Let's talk about that for a second, because the IHRA definition replaced a previously adopted definition that was written by the European Monitoring Center on Racism and Xenophobia, which became the EU Fundamental Rights Agency. So this is commonly known as the EUMC definition, the old one, which is a Eurozone creation. But even the Euros claim, the people who wrote the original definition that the IHRA one was designed to replace, they say that the original one was not meant as a legal definition, wasn't meant to legislate anything, was only used for monitoring in terms of statistics, which is itself a rather sort of fraught way to do
No
things.
one wants to take responsibility is what I see all over this.
Exactly. Well, in fact, the 2020 EU document that I read says this working definition was not designed to be legislated, but to provide operational guidance to relevant public authorities, which I think that is a very Weasley way to phrase that.
Yeah, it's a fucking cop-out.
So the original EUMC definition was supplanted by one written by a group of academics led by a guy named Ken Stern out of Bard College. Ken Stern is, by the way, very much a liberal Zionist. He makes no bones about it. This one included a lot of vague language that was kind of similar to the original vague language, plus this: denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, e.g. by claiming the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor, et cetera, et cetera. Basically what we talked about earlier. Applying double standards by requiring of Israel a behavior that is not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Predictably, it has been adopted by dozens of states and institutions and has been used primarily to call critics of Israel anti-Semitic. And it is very much worth noting that Ken Stern, the liberal Zionist who was the person who put together this definition, has frequently inveighed against adoption of this definition by any legal body. And frankly, the guy seems to have a ton of regret. This has made him very, very unpopular in the Jewish community.
I can imagine.
So it's sort of astounding. I didn't realize this, but he's been writing letters to various government bodies that have tried to adopt this for like almost a decade now, being like, do not adopt this, and stating very plainly, like, by adopting this, all that you will enable is the repression of criticism of Israel. Like, this will not at all help you actually identify anti-Semitism. What you are doing is you are co-opting this definition that I misguidedly wrote in order to stamp down criticism of this nation state.
Yeah.
But that's not all. Like the I have no idea if the Senate will adopt this or will vote this bill in. I mean, it's kind of unclear. It seemed to be a lot of times bills will get passed in Congress and then the Senate will kill them.
Yeah. That's kind of the Senate's role a little bit.
I know. But like part of me is like, I feel like this one might pass.
It depends. I mean, if you see the outcry from really conservative members in the Republican Party,
yes,
that's what's been really funny. So people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and a bunch of them.
Matt Gaetz.
Of course, and a bunch of the kind of like TPUSA talking heads and, Con Inc. guys or whatever have come out and said like, well, actually, this bill goes way too far. It's the state policing speech. I mean, this would make it illegal for us to say that the Jews killed Jesus.
Yes.
Like, this was a big talking point that they didn't like, which is incredible because it's basically saying, like, no, I'm too anti-Semitic to vote for the ban anti-Semitism bill.
Well, it's funny because like
Seems like maybe not the thing to say out loud.
Ilhan Omar, it's whatever, all the other like sort of left-wing people in Congress get painted as these really vicious anti-Semites. But like I genuinely do believe Marjorie Taylor Greene has some crazy views on Jewish people.
Yes.
And it's been pretty apparent.
I have no idea, but I would not be surprised.
Like it's been pretty apparent that the fissure that has occurred on the right in the wake of October 7th isn't similar really to the fissure between like the left and the left liberals. Like there's some pretty out anti-Semites who are like prominent voices on the right who are like incontrovertibly, I'm not somebody who sees anti-Semitism under the bed, anything. Very much the case, I don't see that. But it's like Candace Owens, a bunch of these kind of people are like, it's like, yeah, this is like obviously somebody who hates Jews and who believes insane things about
and
Jewish people.
juicing for listeners and followers and likes and retweets and money from an increasingly like bizarro kind of like cable news. It's some cable news, but it's like extremo internet news, addled, lumpen middle class, lower middle class, evangelical-minded American brain.
But this bill in Congress that's heading up to the Senate is not the only psychotic piece of legislation that's come out lately. Now, I didn't know this, but I read in a recent Substack post by Lee Fong about it kind of details all of the different legislative efforts to tamp down on criticism of Israel that have occurred in the past few months. There's one here in New York State that is put forth, has a bunch of co-sponsors on it. And I just want you to read this psychotic legislation right here.
Enacts the New York State Anti-Semitism Vandalism Act, which establishes the crime of vandalism of pro-Israel print, which provides a Class A misdemeanor for any individual who intentionally destroys, damages, removes, or causes to be destroyed, damaged, or remove any banner, poster, flyer, or billboard which is located in a public space where the intent or purpose of such banner, poster, flyer, or billboard is to bring awareness for Israeli individuals who have been victims of a crime or to positively support the country or citizens of Israel in any way. I mean, all things aside, there's a lot to talk about there, but what is anyone who causes any individual who causes wants something to be destroyed? What does that mean?
Well, what does it mean? Israeli bring awareness for Israeli individuals who have been victims of a crime. So, let's say an Israeli individual comes to New York City, and maybe goes to the dance club at night and hits somebody. And they put up it's like, I don't understand it. Is it, you're talking specifically about the hostage posters, but they don't say that.
Well, it's the hostage posters, and then it's any kind of poster that positively supports the country or the citizens of Israel in any way, which, anyone can become a citizen of Israel if they're Jewish, so.
I guess my question here is, can you think of any laws or legislation like this? Anything comparable to this?
No, we were talking about that. Thinking of a historic example that you can draw parallels to, I legitimately can't.
Yeah.
Setting even aside the comparison to a foreign country, the only thing that I can think of is the early 20th century Red Scare laws that targeted anyone that had any sort of positive affiliation or perceived positive affiliation with the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I can think of that went that far in terms of attempting to tamp down and target. But it's like an inverse of that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Because you can't talk shit about this. That's the thing. Famously, during the both of the Red Scares, it was essentially verboten to speak even positively in a liberal sort of way,
right,
in terms of coexistence with the Soviet Union and then China. They took away Paul Robeson is an excellent sort of very clear example of this kind of stuff. Took away his passport, prevented him from traveling, didn't want him to speak, cancel all his gigs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, someone who, of course, and this is how it always goes, lauded for his incredibly brave political speech.
Of course, yeah. But I can't think of an example where it's illegal to talk shit on a country. Now, this is what is really like surprising to me about this. And not surprising, actually, I shouldn't say that at all. But really, frankly, and I mean this sincerely, like very shocking and like appalling about this kind of legislation. You know, one of the things that I've been really, really, really uneasy with as a Jew, I hate saying that kind of shit, but, you know, from my perspective, as an individual with a large nose and a rude personality, is that in the wake of October 7th, the amount of peculiar or unique support that I would say that Israel has received from our government. Like, I don't know how to say this other than, and you don't have to comment, but it essentially is like an anti-Semite's wet dream. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you know, the Jews control everything. Well, now it's illegal to talk shit about them. Like, oh, Jews control everything. Like, oh, you're gonna get fired if you fucking you know, if you talk about Israel in any way. Like, it's I don't know how else to say. I mean, maybe that's a weird way to phrase it or whatever, but it's fucking. It makes me sick to see this kind of shit.
You know, I was thinking about that with regards to. I mean, this is sort of, you know, in the same vein, like with Dana Bash, right? She gave that insane monologue on CNN. Maybe we can play a clip of it here.
Making Jewish students feel unsafe at their own schools is unacceptable, and it is happening way too much right now. What you just saw is 2024 in Los Angeles, harkening back to the 1930s in Europe, and I do not say that lightly. The fear among Jews in this country is palpable right now.
And she basically, you know, is making a very direct comparison. I mean, she just says that, you know, what's happening here is just like Nazi Germany, meaning that the kids on these campuses are Nazis. I mean, it's like an absurd comparison.
Absurd comparison.
But, you know, thinking about like, I don't know, like someone needs, I don't know how to say this, but like what happens to, we've talked a lot about historical memory and the complicated sustaining historical memory and preserving and defending historical memory, how important that is to a culture. You know, we talked about that in the case of the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
And how it was been weaponized and kind of turned against itself and all of these things with the Marcos regime. And it's, you know, I was listening to Dana Bash give that, you know, go on that tirade or whatever, and I'm just like, what happens to the Holocaust, like, after this? Like, what happens to, how does a generation seeing how the Holocaust has been weaponized in this way divorce the fungibility of that from that? Like, how do you preserve the horror of that now that it's been made fungible and now that it's been instrumentalized to such a, like, grotesque end? And that, to me, is, like, very scary.
Yeah.
Like that, and very upsetting. And, like, you know, I don't know what kind of political project that entails, but it feels like a very uphill battle, and it hasn't even begun yet.
Well, it's really, you can't separate it from Israel and pro-Israel people's war to weaponize essentially every part of Jewish history, every part of Jewish suffering in the defense of this state, and particularly in defense of this state's right to kill or do whatever they want to the Palestinians. That's really what it is. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, what to make of this shit when these people turn the Holocaust into a gun? You know what I mean? Into another weapon. And
that has been, I mean, you rightly point out that it's been a project for a very long time. You know, we've had Norm on the show. Like, obviously
he
that's
wrote a book, Holocaust in History. It's great.
But it had been sort of, I mean, I hate saying this, but it had been sort of like quarantined into these very powerful, of course, and vast, influential donor networks and NGOs and kind of more sort of, I don't know, different sort of political projects. But to see it in, like, literally being adopted in this moment by, you know, newscasters, by journalists, by academics, by politicians, like, and it kind of going full on mainstream and to punish what we will get to are a bunch of fucking, you know, 20-year-olds. A bunch of kids in universities doing what kids in universities have been doing for 100 years in this country. Is, I think, like, something different. Something's changed. We're in a new era there.
Yeah, and it's the cynicism of it. it shouldn't astound me, but it does. Like, I'm somebody who is generally fairly blasé. Like, I realize that there's a lot of cynical actors out there. There's a lot of nasty motherfuckers out there. But the defense that they've mustered for Israel in the wake of the genocide that's occurred in Gaza has, I think, crossed lines that in my lifetime, I'm not saying they haven't been crossed before, especially in Israel's history, but in my lifetime, I have not seen crossed in this way. And that, again, as a Jew, like it is tough not only to see, but it also like is legitimately worrying. I'm not afraid in the sense that like a lot of these people are with like anti-Semitism and anything like that. But the way that, historical memory shifts and changes and becomes taken kind of out of history and put into like an arsenal in defense of Israel. Yeah. To me, it is fucking disgusting. Like there's no other way to put it. It's disgusting. I think we got to talk a little bit about what has happened in the past few days, which seems fucking crazy because this really did, a lot of what we're going to be talking about really did occur in the past, I don't even know, week. It might even just be 5 days from recording this episode on May 3rd. After the violence that we saw, and we covered last episode about this stuff at the University of Texas, we also saw the frat boys at Arizona State University work with the police to destroy the Gaza encampment there. I thought there was a pretty illuminating quote from one of the frat members. Would you read this for me, Liz?
Helping those police officers was the most productive release of a lot of pent-up anger towards not only the Hamas supporters on this campus, but across all college campuses, foreign and domestic. And you, frat member, need to go to a psychoanalyst because you have some libidinal energy you need to work out. Absolutely.
Well, we do see that there definitely is a lot of pent-up libidinal energy in these frats. So 70-something people got arrested there. Snipers got deployed again and again at Indiana University and Ohio State. Fuck you for the people who corrected us. Turns out it was both. Now UCLA as well. AP, as of either yesterday or the day before, I can't remember because I have not slept much, says there was around 2,000 people so far arrested nationwide.
The head of Jewish studies at Dartmouth, I mean, this is the kind of shit you just can't even fucking make up. Annalise Orlick, the head of Jewish studies at Dartmouth, she was not only arrested for attempting to protect her Jewish students from riot police that had been deployed on the campus, but then banned from the Dartmouth campus for 6 months. She can't even go on the campus.
I mean, the video of this woman, I mean, this is a grandmotherly looking fucking lady, right? This is a woman with white hair who's short, she looks like exactly like a grandmother, like you draw one, being pushed on the ground by cops and snatched by them and then pushed on the ground by them and swarmed by them. It is just psycho. And that's one of the things that, like, I guess we'll talk about this a little bit later, but like when you see those things like the Dana Bash monologue that she gave on television the other night, calling these people Nazis or terrorists. Yeah. When you have Netanyahu encouraging a foreign leader encouraging the National Guard to come in and everyththing that implies.
Not just. I mean, there was just the fucking, I can't even remember
the ambassador to the UN.
The ambassador who gave this speech where he equated, I mean, he said basically, he was like, we found Hamas in the schools in Gaza. It's no wonder that we also find them in the schools in the United States, at Harvard, at Columbia, whatever he named. With the implication being they bombed those schools, now what? They want to bomb these?
I mean, when you hear these fucking pigs oinking on TV, calling everybody Hamas, they're talking about people like this. A grandmother that's the fucking Jewish studies professor at fucking Dartmouth. I'm sorry. Listen, I have not spent a lot of time among Hamas members, but I've seen a couple of them on TV. They don't look like old fucking white Jewish ladies at fucking Dartmouth. The rhetoric ramped up over the past week. You had the White House, the den of vipers that it is, give out some fucking statement.
Very sleepy vipers.
Well, it wasn't Biden that gave the first statement. They had one of the more like alert younger people.
I just wanted to say sleepy.
The sleepiest viper in the nest. They give this denunciation. The speech from Netanyahu that we played, I guess, an episode before last. But violence, vexingly to the police and politicians, remained vanishingly scarce.
Look at all that alliteration.
You like that?
I did.
And this is somebody
vanishingly violent.
From
The triple
the
V.
time we recorded our last episode, 00 sexting, to now, I have slept maybe 7 hours.
Why?
I've been hyped up. I've been rocking all over the place.
That's not good. If you're spiking your cortisol, that's why you're not sleeping.
Like a football player. What is that bad? What's
Yes,
cortisol?
it's not
Isn't that a
great.
skin thing?
No, maybe.
Cortisone.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. I am still here, still recording. I've been trying to sleep. I just haven't been able to. I've been mad, Liz. So the violence. Let me get back to the violence.
The vexing violence.
The vexing violence. The vexatious violence that we saw. Fucking what a V for Vendetta ass over here.
We got to pass those masks out.
The story about the main one that people point to is this fucking lady at Yale says she got poked in the old peeper by a Palestine flag.
Stabbed, she said.
She got stabbed.
That's what she said.
You're right. She got Salman
little
Rushdie
stabby.
style fatwa stabbed by a
Fatwa.
Fatwa stabbed by a Palestine flag. Now, I saw
The video is
footage.
great. Yeah, it's great.
I reviewed the footage, screams without words style. And let me tell you, this lady's...
There were some words and some screams in this video.
I'm not so sure I believe your story, young lady.
Yeah,
It
well,
seems like you
similar
were
to the other
standing
video.
there yelling at a group of people who passed you by, and a person with a flag walked past you, and the flag brushed your face.
It's so funny though because the way it's a really like an incredible feat of editing because
Yeah.
the way that it cuts off at the end, right as she's going like, oh, it's so
It's like, ow, you stabbed me.
This lady, check this out. This fucking lady writes a goddamn op-ed about getting accidentally grazed in the eye by somebody walking past her at Yale.
As we know, watching the playoffs, this is marginal contact.
Marginal contact!
That's marginal
You wouldn't have
contact.
even ejected this guy for the full game. It'd be a quarter.
He wouldn't even get two. He wouldn't even
Exactly. You should see what would happen if Draymond was there. Because he
Draymond?
would have beat the shit out of that Palestine guy.
Okay.
Sorry,
We
excuse me. But this Yale eye-poked lady writes a fucking, oh, poor me op-ed, her eyes still watering after being grazed by the fabric of a flag, in the Free Press, aka the Fat Press, who then uses that article in another article describing the violence at Columbia. This may sound pedantic to you, but I fucking hate the Free Press. I hate the tone of it, and I hate the way that people pretend that that fucking Barry Weiss isn't just Norman Podhoretz barely in a fucking wig or Stavros in a wig. It is.
I gotta be honest, I don't know if I've ever been on the website.
Here's the thing.
It doesn't come across my desk very often.
I frequently exchanged graphic nudes with Barry Weiss.
Obviously.
And sometimes in doing that, I'm like, I wonder what she's thinking. And to do that, I look at the Free Press. I read everything, baby. And it is insane. I mean, it just became the Israel magazine after October 7th, which
Yeah.
it always wanted to do.
They should. That's a great name.
But they wrote this article
Israel
about
magazine.
the Israel magazine. They wrote this article about how the protesters at Columbia not so innocent, and their one example of violence, which was hyperlinked. It didn't say what it was, but it says there's been violence at Columbia. And if you click the hyperlink, it takes you to the op-ed written by the whiny lady from Yale about getting poked in the eye at Yale. So these people are just shameless fucking liars, and they refuse to issue a correction. Anyways, there has not been violence from students. There was another incident at UCLA where it appears a young Zionist woman was trying to crawl under the legs of a bunch of pro-Palestine protesters. She did not succeed in doing that, and I guess what fell over and somebody like pushed her down because she was crawling under their legs. She makes this whole big deal about it. Those are the dual instances of anything remotely resembling physical violence from protesters to counter-protesters, I guess you could call them. That's it. That is less than the average high school dance and considerably less violent than the average high school dance. But if you were reading the statements from our press, our politicians, and the police, you would see, and leaders of Israel, you would have thought there was like madness on these campuses. But then when something happens like what happened at UCLA, where a group of psychotic Persian Jews descend on the encampment with metal fucking bats, like rods, and just beat the shit out of people. Not even,
also just like a massive plasma screen that apparently was okay for them to just keep up like the entire encampment.
Oh, yeah.
Where they were blasting like either like terrible sounds and terrible shit at night so that these kids couldn't sleep, or where they were just screaming screams without words in front of these fucking protesters, like with these massive speakers next to them where you're like, wait a second, like, so the tents are like too much, but someone coming onto the campus that doesn't
40-year-old
that is not a student
40-year-old Persian Jews
and establishing a fucking massive like plasma screen installation video, like that's okay to just keep up? Like what?
There's like also all these rumors about like private Israeli
it's obviously
security
being protected
firms.
by the police.
By the
police and the police that are at the universities and the universities themselves and all that shit.
You know, in the past couple of days, I spoke to like a dozen people who participated in various encampments across the U.S., including a few at UCLA. And the stuff from UCLA seems by far the craziest in terms of counter-protesters. You know, these guys, I was told, came to the encampment.
Not really surprised, to be honest.
Beat the fuck out of people for like hours, or tried to beat the fuck out of people for hours while a line of police watched them. It seems to me that the cops were trying to have a repeat of the ASU incidents where they would have these little Freikorps bullshitters fucking come down, beat the fuck out of these people. They would declare it, like they would tear down the camp for them, and the police would be like, well, the camp is a mess. You know, it's destroyed now. We're just going to clear you guys out.
But that's this is what they do every time. I mean, it's like these guys come in, and then suddenly it's violence erupts. You know, pro-Israel, pro-Hamas sides.
Yeah,
that's how they report it. Clash in a like battle of the streets, like and. Before it gets corrected, later on when it doesn't fucking matter, it spreads throughout social media. I saw it all over normie social media, normie middle class female social media that is just basically like, repeating, exactly what the LAPD and the UCs are saying about what's happening on these campuses, and saying like, we had to go in and clear this because it got out of hand. Not saying why it did or who started or who actually is getting violent, who's, throwing fucking stink bombs or using tear gas or throwing a fucking firework into a like encampment where kids are, where they're just sitting.
Oh, not only a firework. I mean, they were throwing smoke bombs. They were throwing gas at one point. They threw a bag of mice to try to, I don't know, like freak people out or whatever. People have kind of made hay of the banana stuff. And I guess there was somebody who has like a deathly allergy to bananas.
That's crazy. I've never heard of that.
I know, I haven't either. And I'm like, I'll be honest with you, just no all respect here. If you were going to die from a banana, I probably don't go to, this might be a little dangerous for you. Maybe.
I'm so happy I'm not someone with a deathly allergy. Respect to people that have those, because I think that's tough.
Yeah. Peanut allergy? Crazy.
Yeah, that's everywhere.
Yeah. Imagine being an elephant with one of those.
Oh, Dumbo.
Yeah.
That like got the medicinal plant to.
Yeah.
We got to learn from him.
They're so smart.
That's
I love orangutans.
The world is so amazing.
I know.
I love animals.
I mean, what you saw at UCLA was supervised violence by the LAPD, and I got to tell you, Persian Jews in LA, it's a whole nother motherfucking kind of Jew right there. They are crazy.
They're fucking hype beasts.
They are. They are
Those
crazy.
Those dudes are. And ladies, they, they really,
it's
really
crazy.
Love rap music.
It's crazy. Yeah. Oh,
in a way that makes me uncomfortable.
They grandfather them into the N-word usage in the same way that certain Chinese and Mexican dudes do. It is like they are
crazy.
It's wild. But the fucked up
they all
thing
have like
is
Lambos too,
they
and it's
do.
like why?
Listen, I gotta tell you, I don't know. That's got. I know a lot of Persian Jews that I really like, But the Persian Jew as like the mainline Ashkenazi, like kind of Jewish guy.
Yeah.
You know, you have these different kinds. The mainline Persian one is the craziest.
They all look like they're trying to look like Drake, though, which is a
They do
crazy
kinda look
person
like
to
Drake.
try to
They
look like.
do kind of look like Drake, though. I
Because
have to
he
give them
has, I think they probably also have plastic surgery abs.
Yeah, well, the plastic surgery does run rampant in the
It
LA Persian Jewish
Oh
community.
my God,
It
so
is-
many Chad surgeries.
But also, the females be looking kind of fine. I have to say that. I'm sorry. It's not.
It's way too Instagram
It's
for you.
not like in a way that I would interact. I've never actually interacted with one.
You just
but
see 'em online.
I just see them online.
I feel like they look better online than in person.
I don't. Yeah,
That's
almost
usually how
certainly
plastic
true.
surgery
I've never
works.
really been in the same place as a lot of their women.
Yeah.
like I think they traffic in different areas than I do.
Well, it's West LA.
It's West LA. That's I don't know how to drive. So you got Eric Adams going on TV then. Now,
No, this fucking guy.
Eric Adams is a
I'm
guy.
sick of this guy. He's not even my mayor.
He's not your mayor, but
I'm
I gotta
so
tell you,
sick of him.
for the past few months, I have had multiple tips from people in the know, like real reporters and stuff, who you would be shocked that would ever give me any information. That Eric Adams is like expected to be indicted basically any day, and it's
Can
kind
they
of.
get it over with?
I assume they're building a bigger case against him, but like he is at some point.
For the
I'm
Turkish
pretty
stuff?
sure. I think more than that. I mean, it's pretty
Damn.
clear that he runs like a not very sophisticated
Another
criminal
country.
operation. Yeah. Azerbaijan,
Moldova.
perhaps.
Oh, or that one.
But it
Baku.
seems like you can just give the mayor money and then he'll do what you want. And
Yeah.
I think that he's not very subtle about
100%.
it. It's never a good sign when the FBI comes and takes your phone while you're the mayor.
I mean, he's a cartoon mayor. That was one of the reasons why we
Yes.
first liked him. But now he's worn out his welcome.
Well, his funky bald ass gets on fucking TV and starts talking about how outside agitators and the wife of a convicted terrorist are corrupting our children.
Which is crazy because, like, I didn't even go to the Columbia encampment.
I know, exactly. Now, first of all, I want to get out of the way, too. The stuff he's talking about, like corrupting our children. Now, when I went to the Columbia encampment, I got to admit I'm guilty of this because I'm talking to these young people and I'm like, a lot of them are very adorable, you know? Like, in a way where you're like, you're so young. And I'm so old.
Yeah.
But you're so full of energy and
you're so sleepy.
And I'm so sleepy.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't think of them as kids, but I think of them as pretty young people. But they're literally not children.
Yeah.
Like when I was these kids' age, I was injecting meth and
Yeah.
like running around the streets of San Francisco.
Yeah. But you
Like-
thought you were an adult at 13.
That is true, yeah. But you know, and
Hasn't plagued you at all since.
it has no. I've been good. I'm technically in dog years or whatever. I'm like 50 now. I've lived a long life, Liz.
I wonder
but
what orangutan years are.
I hope they live to be old. But I think they do because they look wise when they get all big.
They're
and
very
fat.
they have shaman energy.
Very, very shamanesque. But, you know, they're talking about like, oh, these are kids, they're being corrupted, these being corrupted. First of all, anybody who's ever been engaged in political work knows that young people have the most insane ideas out of anybody. And if anything, you're forced to go along with them because they can just outlast you in any debate and then use words against you that you don't understand. Second of all, they're talking about the wife of a convicted terrorist being at this encampment. A lot of hay has been made about this. And I want to clear this up a little bit. The lady is named Nala Al-Arian. Now, she is the wife of somebody who is not exactly convicted of terrorism, but the point is, I think she visited the encampment for like less time than I did. And I am an unconvicted terrorist who is on technically, officially only one terror list.
That you know of.
Yeah, but it's a different country, Turkey. Her husband was a Florida-based Palestinian college professor that was very famously run up on extremely spurious charges in the aftermath of 9/11, Patriot Act charges, that he had been a supporter of Palestinian Islamic jihad in the 1980s and 1990s. Now, again, he was not convicted by a jury. In fact, a jury declined to convict him. But the government, after that, still held him until he eventually, after being held in prison for like 10 fucking years without ever actually like, you know, this guy was not convicted of a crime. He was in jail for a decade away from his wife and kids. You know, he's in jail.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, that's like people serve prison sentences for less time than this guy was in jail for. He eventually pled to a lesser charge in order to just get it over with, and he got kicked out of the country. Actually, I believe he now lives in Turkey. This is literally a extremely famous case of post 9/11 anti-Muslim harassment. Like it is not like she wasn't married to Osama bin Laden.
Right.
You know, Nala, the wife of the convicted terrorist, told AP that dozens of her family members had been killed in Gaza. And it's like, okay, so this woman is not allowed to visit these young people, many of whom also have relatives that have been killed in Gaza, because her husband pled guilty to some like lesser charge in 2015 and fled to Turkey. It is obviously just like this cynical way to paint these young people as like the pawns of some Hamas-like figure. When you look at a picture of this lady, you're talking, it's like, oh, this is just like a kind of older lady who's like a school teacher.
Well, I think that has been like an extremely, extremely successful line about all of this stuff, the outside agitators. You know, everyone was saying, even though it's come out, of course, that everyone arrested at Columbia in the hall was students.
I think there was 2 people who weren't students, but I got the inside scoop on that. And it's just like, I think one of them was like someone's like romantic, I can't remember, girlfriend or boyfriend or something. And the other person is like somebody who's like in SJP and make another school.
The thing is with the way the NYPD and the mayor's office is coming out, in Columbia, I believe, coming out and being like, okay, well, these are the people we arrested, because it includes people that were on the street,
yes,
outside of the campuses, including at City University, uptown, or even further up, which is like even more open.
Yes.
And the campus was way more open, and it was a bit more rockin'.
Yeah.
Than at Columbia. But so when they were rounding up people and throwing them in the old paddy wagon, that included like plenty of there was like one person who was arrested who was just walking his dog down the street.
Oh yeah. Oh no, the police were going.
And then they had to find the dog.
From what they didn't, they couldn't find the dog.
No, they did. No, but my point being that the NYPD is politically, purposely, obviously collapsing all of these numbers together to be like, look, so many of these were outside agitators, to further paint this picture that actually the people in Columbia in the hall that took over I love that I just said Columbia as if it's
Colombia.
Colombia. I didn't mean to. But no, they're collapsing this in a PR, press release. So to continue this lie that they had to go with initially to justify this like completely absurd level of the police coming in and the way they did, like this sweep that they did, if you want to fucking call it that. But, so that people continue to repeat this, that the kids inside the hall were outside agitators, a.k.a. like Hamas sleeper cells or whatever these people are fucking imagining.
Well, the other thing, too, about Columbia is that a lot of the people there that they're saying were like outside the hall but were outside agitators but weren't students, they were alumnus. So they were people who still, and the thing is, if you were an alumni or alumnus, I don't know, whatever, they graduated from fucking Columbia with some degree. They were there. They're given ID cards that they can use to get into Columbia. And that's the other thing, too, about CUNY, is that they're saying, oh, all these people, there's these people on the campus that weren't students. Now, I talked to several people that were there, and they all basically gave me the same ratio. They would say like 75, 80% of the people that were there were students. Maybe 20% were people who were in political groups outside of that with those students. And then like not really anybody who's just like there on their own. Because I got to tell you this, I am a fairly politically active person. I'm like not going to go like spend as like a political 35-year-old, like that's their fight and I'll support them in that. But like, I'm not going to go like lead the struggle in the campus.
Well,
you know
this
what I
line
mean?
has been repeated everywhere and people are really taking it far, and it shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, I think there's a lot of, centrist liberals who are, on their fainting couches about all of this, like the hullabaloo at the campuses that are repeating these lines to justify how they want to watch these kids get punished. And now, you have right-wing politicians saying, well, this doesn't actually go far enough. The big problem is there's so many international students.
Yes.
What we need to do is get rid of all of the international students at these campuses, which feeds into a whole nother – I mean, it's just it's really, really shocking how quickly and how fervently everyone is sort of hysterically elevating the discourse in order to justify the completely over-the-top response to these protests.
By the way, Democrats are 100% allied with them on. Now, one thing that has been gaining, you're right, a lot of traction on the right. There's always been the kind of love it or leave it thing, right?
I don't listen to that podcast.
Yeah, but like, you know, like if you don't like it here, get the fuck out. But that is, I think we're closer to that getting codified into law than anything else, than we ever have been, rather. You know, I believe that DeSantis was talking about that for a little bit after October 7th. It does seem to be like one of the things that like they're going to try to push after Trump wins.
Well, they can't. I mean, you can't.
I don't think it's going to be.
All the universities would go bankrupt. I mean, like the international students are what pay
fucking
for
China and Qatar or whatever. Yeah, that's the Israelis themselves are like, well, they always pay for this. That's why there's all this stuff here. Yeah, I mean, it's frankly patently fucking ridiculous. But it's one of those things that I have never really seen conservatives and liberals so united at any time in the past 5 years than this.
Well, it is funny, you know, when people point out. I mean, this is the first kind of like quote unquote like left protest movement in a very long time that was not supported by a lot of mainstream Democrats.
No.
You know, I think a lot of like right-wing people want to compare, you know, these like kind of like brainworms, like moron obsessed with internet people are like, oh, it's like George Floyd protests. And it's like, well, no, it's actually pretty different.
It's really different.
And actually the reaction from the Democratic Party has been very different. Even the reaction from, I would say, like, the kind of slow movement to lend support from even more left-leaning progressive organizations has been, you know, pretty different.
That's something we were talking about before we started recording is how it is so clear that Palestine is the red line that you cannot cross. That you know, it's imagine, look at the reaction from 2020, right? You know, you have like BLM painted on the sidewalks everywhere, and like, you know, you have like London Breed, mayor of San Francisco, talking about we're gonna you know, like cut the police budget and all this kind of shit. And then of course, like within a year, like it's a Law and Order again, but you still have the BLM on the sidewalk or BLM Plaza or whatever, BLM this, BLM that. You have fucking what's their name with the mansions and all that kind of shit. You all these people with their NGOs. Not that they're a complete lack of you know, like SJP or anything like that, but it's a pretty fucking. I don't think anyone's about a fucking mansion at SJP headquarters. Whereas the reaction to the Palestine stuff is like, these are fucking terrorists that we need to come in and like we need to annihilate. Essentially, like we need to lock these people the fuck up or kick them out of the country. And you see that extreme rhetoric from the right, and you see it mirrored on the liberal left completely. You know, we see like with the Stop Cop City stuff in Atlanta, right? Like the RICO and the terrorism charges and all that kind of shit. Like we see it when like the Democrats are like, actually, this is a red line for us. Like we don't really have a use for the BLM stuff anymore. But with Palestine, there's like, you don't even have that like leeway of a few years or whatever. There's just like, this is not happening under any circumstances. They'll tell you that there's ways that you can protest. You can do it like Biden said in his speech the other night. Oh, you can do it legally and without disrupting anything. And you know, none of this anti-Semitic violence that I saw Dana Bash or fucking Al Sharpton on fucking Morning Joe talking about how you're the January 6th rioters or whatever. You know, you can't do that, but you know, you can protest it. Yeah, we'll get you fired from your fucking job. We'll get you blacklisted from any future work. We'll get your face put on fucking wanted posters, put up all over around your house, fucking drive vans with a fucking calling you a terrorist by your fucking house. But yeah, no, you can protest it, absolutely. And also, we'll continue giving unlimited guns, bombs, weapons, money to the people that are killing your family members. But yeah, no, you can protest it, but this yeah, it's totally fine. And we'll make it illegal to protest it, but you can do it. Trust me.
Well, since we've been talking about some of the criticisms that have been leveled at the protesters over the past week, I was having a conversation with someone and talking to them about the situation and on the campuses. And I'd say this person's very, I don't know, normal, centrist, well-meaning, but probably not as informed, opinions. But I would say boomer generation, right? And I was saying, well, it's really reminiscent. Isn't it reminiscent of all the Vietnam protests? Like, what's the difference? Like, what is the difference? Because I know for a lot of boomers of a certain type, of a certain age, that like the Vietnam era civil disobedience moment, which was really like almost 10 years, really, it's like hallowed ground.
Yeah.
It's like sacred. It's like that was, we did that. We did that.
We did that. We ended that. We ended that goddamn war.
No, but I mean, people are very, and, fair enough, are very proud of a lot of the, how active a lot of movements were, whether that was like adjacent to or connected with Vietnam era protests. I mean, that was we talked to Claude Marks, who had incredible stories of the, all of the action at Berkeley that I'm going to talk about in a second. But in this conversation I was having, it was like something short-circuited, and they couldn't make a connection between what was happening on the campuses now and what had happened on the campuses and elsewhere in, the mid-60s, late 60s, early 70s, right? And so I was like, well, I'm going to put on my little hat, and maybe it's time for Liz's debunking corner. A little moment of debunking.
What's the debunking hat look like?
In my head, it's sort of like a bookie hat, like a visor.
Yeah.
But instead, in the card in front says debunker.
Debunker. Okay. Are you wearing like pince-nez or whatever?
Yeah. But not like, well, maybe.
You're not? Okay. Well, then I'll put them on.
Maybe they're like little wire glasses.
Okay, but you're wearing them on the
down
okay.
low.
As long as you're wearing glasses low.
Yeah, I got to debunk for a second and pull up the old archive. I went deep into the archives because I was like, and this was genuinely like, I was like, I'm curious. How did the media, because I think I might know, but I'm going to look into the archives. How did the media react to all of the student demonstrations during that time? Okay, let me see. Now, a lot of Vietnam protests, especially at colleges, were concerned with, at the colleges, like at the colleges now, the kids were concerned with what their institutions were doing to materially support the war that they disagreed with, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of institutions at the time had partnerships with companies that were invested or making weapons of war, just like they are now. At the time during Vietnam, this, a big focus was on chemical weapons, on napalm. That means like, a company like Dow Chemical, which produced napalm, which, we dropped 1 million pounds of on the Vietnamese people.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things about napalm is that it's really difficult to put out. It's not just like setting somebody on fire. It's coating them with a substance that like keeps burning, right?
Yeah.
And so even if like, say I'm a 10-year-old girl in a village that has been said to be a VC stronghold or whatever, and some 19-year-old fuck from Mississippi drops napalm from a plane on me, I will basically keep burning until I'm ash.
So there was an infamous protest at University of Wisconsin-Madison. It's literally called the Dow Chemical Protest. And in fact, the website, there's an entire website with like pages and pages and pages on the University of Wisconsin-Madison site. It's like a separate site where it's like, remembering the Dow Chemical Protest. And it's like this very like, ooh, weren't we so amazing? And we're so proud of ourselves and how active our student body was. Okay, students blocked offices where Dow was recruiting. So the chemical companies, General Electric would also do this. Big companies would come to colleges and do big recruiting fairs where they would trying to hire people.
CIA.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There were a lot of protests centered around those as well at the time. So a bunch of students staged a sit-in to block where Dow was recruiting in protest of the war. This went on for like a couple of days. And the first day, very peaceful, sit-in,
Groovy.
super groovy.
Yeah.
We're all here to peace, love, whatever. Second day, not so much because, and this might sound familiar, the university called the cops. Now, the cops come in, they beat the kids with riot batons, and for the first time in campus protest history, used tear gas to disperse the crowd. Now, all of the protesters obviously didn't expect this because it had been the first time that a chemical weapon had been used on them.
That's the first time that tear gas was deployed?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they all needed medical attention, so that quickly dispersed. The police then stayed on the campus, but it didn't work. By nightfall, then 3,000 students showed up to be like, you need to get the fuck off the campuses. We're going to boycott the university until you remove the police presence, and we're going to protect these kids, and you have to promise that you're not going to punish these guys who staged a sit-in. This sounds very familiar, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Something I should mention too is that Columbia is now planning on having a police presence on campus until commencement. So there will just be cops stationed on
until
campus
after
now.
a couple days
Until
after.
after commencement. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I get pissed because I see a constant refrain from people online that are like, this kind of form of protest is new. This doesn't exist. People don't do this. Yes, they've been doing it for so long. There were so many campus protests that were sit-ins or occupations of buildings or blocking, things like recruitments or challenging universities on their affiliations with companies that were manufacturing weapons or materially supporting the U.S. government, the Department of Defense, in Vietnam. That you can't even I couldn't even list them all. There were so many. I mean, it would be impossible. I pulled up one, right? There's this. Hold on, let me see. There's this tweet from some annoying guy. He's got the most annoying avatar. I always see it all the time. It's like he's got his angled face. He's like Aaron Rupar.
Oh yeah.
And he's got that crazy.
Yeah. That guy's got.
smile.
I gotta tell you, one of the most goated jobs in the world. So in every TV news organization. I don't know still, but there have been people whose job it is to basically look through footage and clip things, essentially. That's what this guy does, but for Joe Biden, and he's made an entire career out of it. In a just society, Aaron Rupar would be forced to dig his own grave and then go through a mock execution every single night until he no longer knew if he was alive or dead, and then he would peel potatoes for, I don't know, the next 20 years until he perished.
That's crazy-ass Groundhog Day.
Yeah, it would be kind of a crazy Groundhog Day situation.
So he tweeted this. He quoted, I think this is, my eyes tell me this is from an Intercept article. You're always like, oh, I know where that was posted. It says, images and video released by Columbia University show overturned and stacked furniture. I'm going to add a little. Broken windows and other damage. No. In the aftermath of the seizure and occupation of Hamilton Hall by protesters and its clearing by police Tuesday. The images from inside Hamilton Hall show overturned chairs, tables, and other furniture. Protesters broke windows and caused other damage.
A window?
At the occupied hall, university officials said, and images showed barricades had also been set up. Oh, someone please bring me my fainting couch. What are the kids doing? Okay. So he says, in response to that, he says, is ransacking buildings a common form of student protest? I don't think so. Well, Mr. Rupar, consider yourself debunked. Because, I'm going to read this is from the New York Times, 1969, great year. The students who were protesting the Reserve Officers Training Corps program on the campus were said to have been armed with metal pipes. As they made their escape, fleeing in all directions, they left the executive offices a wild jumble of overturned furniture, spilling filing cabinets, books strewn across the floor, and a white bedsheet with the red word revolution scrawled upon it. Now, this is from one of the many campus protests that took place from about 1964 to 72. And this one was at Fordham. This is from the New York Times. The students who led the demonstrations told the RAM, the campus newspaper, on Tuesday that, quote, a building seizure is the best possible tactic and that the group would occupy the administration building. Protesters went to a side door where they broke a pane of glass, see if that sounds familiar, and forced their way in. One student began chanting, U.S. out of Vietnam, ROTC out of Fordham. Now, what they were obviously protesting was the ROTC presence on campuses that was all over, and the university having those partnerships in order to recruit people and draft people into the war.
For those who are maybe not from America or grew up in the Bay Area where they don't have ROTC, or at least they didn't at my high school, but at my high school someone would have shot up the fucking school even with a wooden gun. But there was it's like a Reserve Officer Training Corps, I believe it's called. Yeah. It's like where they have your most, no disrespect, all respect, autistic classmates in high school do like twirls with wooden rifles so that they can command a 19-year-old to execute a Vietnamese family. That's what they were doing there when they eventually joined the army. It's like it's pretty unpopular, and it's like actually now I think it's kind of just like loser kids that do it. I think it's like it's almost like, you know, like I'm at robot camp or whatever. No disrespect, I mean that, but it back then it was like they are training like the next generation of you know.
Yeah.
Baby killers.
Yeah. And so a lot of students, rightly, were like, get these people off our fucking campuses. And they saw that one of the best tactics to do so was to take administration buildings and negotiate with the schools until their demands were met. Oh my God, crazy. That sounds so familiar. But in almost every case that I looked up, I'm not going to list, I mean, I went through a lot of fucking articles and it was pretty shocking. But in almost every case on campuses where students were protesting U.S. policy in Vietnam, they were also protesting other stuff that their schools were doing, because that's also been a classic refrain when it comes to these school campus protests. They're like, well, I don't, you know, what are their demands? They have so many demands, and they say all these broad things, right? Like, but the Columbia occupation back in '69, you know, that had as much to do with the school disciplining previous students for political actions as it did the Morningside gym plans, which everyone has talked about, as it did with the university's affiliations with the Department of Defense, right? Now, all of those protests were met with really similar sounding criticisms. Here's my first favorite, which I would call like from the sensible moderate position. And I think this will sound very familiar to people. This is from the New York Times, again, 1965. The student rebellion continues high on the agenda of the college and university leadership. Rebellion. A forerunner of things to come was apparent in the spread of demonstrations protesting involvement in the Vietnam War, as those last week in New York, Chicago, Columbus, and Berkeley, California, whose students heard protest speeches prior to an attempt to march on the Oakland Army base. Cool, very cool. Fortunately, there are emerging sensible attempts to separate justified action from irresponsible acts. The associated student government stressed that the extreme activists were not representative of the majority of students. They warned that when students apply indiscriminately the techniques of resistance which Negroes used effectively in the South, when there is no legal recourse, they may, quote, dilute and debase the moral significance of demonstration for civil rights.
Oh, the
now,
moral
this
significance.
echoes exactly what you just said from Joe Biden.
Yeah.
We said, no, we in this country, we have a proud heritage of protest, of civil disobedience. Everyone always points to the civil rights. Always.
Yeah, always.
None of those protests were strictly legal.
No. The whole point was that some of them were illegal. And you had the exact same criticism actually coming from Southern governors back then,
Right.
too. Like, you know, like, I just wish these people wouldn't break the law. Like, you know, these people are bringing disorder. It's so funny because, like, I don't see how you could read this stuff and not come out with the impression that the people who run the media and in the government and police and are just the most cynical, frankly, evil people that you could imagine.
Well, and that they've been this cynical for that long.
Yeah, because it works.
100 years.
It works.
They've been saying the same thing. I mean, you go through the archives of this media coverage and you catch all of the kind of familiar, I would say, disdain. Like, it depicts the protesters as petulant children, right? You know, there's like every kind of news article is dripping with contempt for these kids. And, you know, I saw that there was someone who clipped a kind of Instagram comment from, I mean, I'm clearly a parent, on something that was like, I don't pay $85,000 for my kid to go to a fucking school that's a mess like this.
Yeah.
And that's the fucking attitude, right? Like all of these opinion pieces, or even just straight news articles calling all of these kids stinky, ugly, long hair, beards, dirty clothes, etc. Like, oh, look at these dirty hippies. Look at how like fucking disgusting they are. Like, these aren't like what cool, nice, good kids do, right? Like, it's all this sort of you know, depicting all of these kids as like extremely lazy, as you know, which is like evidence of their intellectual immaturity, their petulance, and it's this very like, why won't our children behave? Like, that's the attitude.
Yeah.
Right? But the last thing I'll say on this is like, one thing I was really surprised about was to see the kind of like parroted line of the outside agitators. because that did feel, I was like, there's no way they'd be like, they used that one too. And yet here it is in the Atlantic cover story, 1966.
Classic.
Yes, The New Tyrants of Berkeley. A migration of non-students descended on Berkeley. Already thriving in 1964, the non-student colony, love that language, was reinforced as news traveled of the discovery of freedom in California. Tired radicals came to be rejuvenated. Lumpen intellectuals set out to found a free university. Maoists determined to escalate now on campus. Varieties of sexual reformers expounded their creeds.
I'd love to do that.
Some were in flight from stark personal tragedy. Others were clinging to rebellion and adolescence and required periodic transfusions of student vitality. Some were American variants of Raskolnikov.
I'm going to try this. Verkovensky,
And Nechayev.
Catechism of a Revolutionary.
What is a non-student? He is indeed defined negatively. He has no job, no calling, no vocation. He is a guerrilla fighter against society, whether he calls it the establishment, the power structure, or the system. And I mean, it ends classically by also blaming the faculty, which we've seen over and over and over again by all of these little talking heads. A cult of youth swept over faculty activists. Somehow, youth's idealism must have history on its side, even if it went wrong in particular instances. Yeesh. One could not help remembering that German professors in the 1930s had apologized for their Nazi students in precisely this way, with precisely this faith in redeeming the sincerity of youth.
So that's from the Atlantic article in the 60s?
That's from the Atlantic in 1966, talking about the free speech movement on campus at Berkeley, which is now, by the way, UC Berkeley has a plaque on its steps commemorating because of how monumental this is in Berkeley history and how the students were able to achieve such, great. It's such a monument to the progressive liberal left-wing attitude and freedom of speech and political thought that is Berkeley, California.
Funny you mention that, baby doll, because Columbia University also very much celebrates the occupation of Hamilton Hall, the very same Hamilton Hall that was occupied the other night back in 1968, 1969, I can't remember which. It is like a part of the legacy that they celebrate. Back then when it happened, they actually took a hostage. Now, the Baroness Shafiq tried to kind of intimate that they were trying to take hostages this time, when it turns out they were just letting the two security guards out. But she's like, we were able to negotiate for the release of two employees. Did not happen at all. Talked to several people who were party to information that nothing like that occurred. These guys just left the building. It's funny. It's and I think that's something that listeners should keep in mind, is that this happens so often, is that they'll be like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And then in 40 years, they'll say you're right.
Yeah.
And it's tough, because the thing is, all this snide dismissiveness that you read now, and even you can remember back to the Iraq War stuff, right? It's always this fucking tone of these stupid fucks at the Free Press, the Atlantic, or fucking Joe Biden, or whoever the fuck in the Republican Party talking about this kind of stuff. It's like, at the end of the day, what's at issue here is that these students want the place that they pay money to and go to, or maybe they get a scholarship, whatever, the place that they're supposed to be learning, to not be involved whatsoever with the genocide that's happening in Gaza. I mean, that's
yes, disclose and divest. They actually have an incredibly narrow set of demands.
Yes, they're not asking for fucking Columbia to end the war. They can't do that, but they don't want to be involved in an institution that is possibly involved involved in industries that fucking kill their family members. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, but it becomes so divorced from the reality of what these people are demanding. And that's also by design, right? They want you to think that these are just anarchists who are out to destroy their university or whatever, when they actually have a pretty clear and broad narrow political demands, and that are achievable, but the institutions and the donors to those institutions really don't want them, and so that's who's in charge of all these schools is the people who are like giving them hundreds of millions of dollars to build university campuses
and the
in
board
Tel
of
Aviv.
trustees. I have not seen enough attention paid to the board of trustees. I was talking to someone affiliated with Columbia and Barnard, and they were saying they had I'll just quote them, but they said, the president, she only has the power to quit.
Yeah.
She's just thrown out there and she will take the fall. But the real people that she is, that she's, taken our directions from are the board of trustees. It's the board of trustees. And, actual real little journalists out there should take a closer look at those guys.
And I got to tell you, Columbia, Baroness Shafiq, first of all, you should quit. And I don't just mean Columbia. I mean, you know what I mean. But
I got a little Willy Rag there.
what's Willy Rag talking? That's not me. I believe that all women should live forever. But the commencement that's supposed to be happening, that you cleared all the campus to happen, that you did all this shit in order to make happen, that is going to be, I bet you, a fucking nightmare.
I want to know who's the commencement. Who's going to actually do it?
I am this year, which is a bit tough. Yeah, they couldn't get anyone else to do it, but I'm going to do it.
You're going to cross the picket line.
Yeah, I'm going to cross the picket line. You know what? They give me an honorary degree. And, well, I can't tell you, but let me just say it is something that gay men do to vaginas.
It's called human geography.
Uh-huh. So I have a personal thing that I want to get out of the way on this show.
Mm-hmm. This is a different kind of debunking corner.
This is a different kind of debunking corner. So in the past week, and we are going long. What time are we at?
1 hour 30.
1 hour 30. Well, let's get to 2:50. The past week, I have been engaged in the journalistic practice of trying to find the shortest police officer in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
which, by the way, listeners, keep those photos coming.
Keep those photos coming.
Keep them coming.
And I don't want, and it's an awkward conversation when you send in a guy that's like 5'7".
Everyone is
not
like,
short enough.
Everyone is like, oh my God, TrueAnon, when are you going to make a book? And it's like, keep the photos coming.
What do you think we're going to make a book about?
We're trying to put together a photo book.
Yeah.
A coffee table book.
My thing is
shortest
this with
cops in America.
I don't come from my position on police officers from some like ACAB, whatever, like position. I just have done a lot of crime in my life, and I don't like the way that police have reacted to it. And I find it rude that they have allowed to have gun and I'm not. So I have noticed that New York Police Department, which is, by the way, I fucking hate New York cops. Even if you're like somebody's like, well, I like the police, so I play New York Police Department.
Which one of our listeners is like, I am pretty pro-police.
I mean, it's just like, whatever. I mean, there's people who have, I would say have more maximalist positions on law and order than I do.
That's true.
But
I love that show, and I think there should be
me
4,
too.
5,
I think
6
they should
more
let me be. I
spin-offs.
think they should do an episode about you because of what you did.
Thanks.
Actually, this could maybe be a Law and Order episode. Some of what I'm going to be saying coming up here, but or an SVU episode. But I don't believe that if you can't organically kick my ass, you should be able to be a cop. I think that's fair, right? Because here's my thing.
What is organically?
I mean, organically beat the fuck out of me without like a gun,
without use of tool.
I'm like, I'll give you the nightstick.
Like fisticuffs?
Well, no, because like. I'll give you the nightstick because if there's just fisticuffs, then like I'll kill you. Like, and
you will kill any cop with your hands.
I don't think I can kill any cop, but I could kill a cop. Yeah, I think so.
A short cop.
You could kill someone with your hands. You don't have to be strong to do it.
I think you do.
No, you don't have to be that strong.
What do you have to do?
You poke someone really hard in the fucking eye.
Oh, well, we saw a video of that though. It's not very.
I know, but if you do it really hard. I'm just saying, I don't think I could kill most cops. I think I could kill like a short or like a kind of bigger one. Like, here's my thing. If you're like of a plus-sized police officer and I kill you by running up 5 flights of stairs.
Oh, by like induced heart attack.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm just going to roundhouse kick somebody.
Oh, well, it seems like that's what you're saying.
I've been a smoker for a long time.
I was going to say, I didn't want to be mean, but I was like, I don't think you can do that.
I haven't been in a fight for like 6
Can you run
years.
up 5 stairs?
I can run up 5 flights of stairs. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm surprisingly pretty. I have a lot of stamina.
Okay. That's good.
But ask any male police officer in New York City. I'm like, you shouldn't be able to have a gun if you can't. I'll let you have the gun if you can beat me up. And I'm not going to say that most cops could beat me up. Like,
I feel like we're
easy.
getting away from the.
I want to say this: most cops could beat me up easy, but a short one could not. A short one could not, and so he's more likely to draw his gun on fire.
Okay, I see.
When I do my stance, which is not the one you're expecting. It's
No.
sort of the pre-movement twerk stance that I do.
You do have that weird gait.
I do have the strange gait. But I am looking for the shortest cop in your city or New York City, and I want to see it in person if that's at all possible too. But if that's
What do you mean?
New York, well, if you're in New York and maybe there's like a cop who hangs out
like drop a
around.
pin?
Yeah, drop a pin. Let me see where it is.
Okay.
I want to see where he is because I want to take a picture of him and I want to ask him some questions.
Slip a little air tag in his pocket.
Exactly. Yeah, or just pick him up, bring him to me.
Sure.
Anyways, so the other day I go to this May Day protest, right? And while I, of course, myself am a genteel member of the bourgeoisie, I go to support my friends in the working class. But, I'm marching down. It's a pretty big pro-Palestine thing, too. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
It's like a worker, it's like a workers thing, but there's a lot of Palestine stuff
Right.
there. And we marched from across from the courthouse, Foley Square, up to Washington Square Park, right? And as we're walking sort of by the IFC movie theater, I noticed this grotesque-looking individual. I'm going to say the guy is maybe 6'3", hairless. And I'm talking waxed, hairless gentleman, covered in an array of freckles that I have not seen before in my 34 years on this planet.
Oh.
Now, I don't know much about skin cancer, but I have a distinct feeling that this guy is going to die from it. He did not look well. Freckles are cute. Everybody likes freckles. This was a little too cute by half. I'll say
Probably
that.
also with the bald head, very expensive to laser the whole thing.
Well, I didn't know you could get freckles completely covering the head.
Of course, you can get freckles
I know,
anywhere.
but you'd think that, listen, a lot of bald guys wear hats, and there's a lot of different
use
opinions on
sunscreen.
that.
He probably needs more of like a chemical sunscreen than physical one.
There was an aura about him that I found distasteful. And there was two counter protesters, some sort of depressed looking individuals carrying the Star David flag, sort of just like yelling formless words without screams at fucking people. But this guy was following. He was going, "Go to Gaza, go to Gaza," and he was repeating it over and over and over to this sort of long march of people who were just not looking at him. He's filming too. So I'm in the park afterwards, talking to a few friends, and I see this lady sitting on a bench, and I see this gentleman, swoop over her and start asking do you support Hamas? Do you support Hamas? Do you think they should have raped all those people? Do you like rape? Do you support Hamas? His phone in this woman's face. Do you like rape? Do you like rape? Do you support Hamas? And I'm like, this is crazy. Mm-hmm. And so I walk over there. I'm like, hey, she obviously feels very uncomfortable. I'm like, hey, stop filming this chick. And he starts getting over on me. Do you like Hamas? Do you like Hamas? And then I get a really good look at him, and I am floored by how physically repulsing this guy's face is. Now, New York City, you see a lot of fucked up looking individuals out there. And I myself, not exactly a Gucci model.
Don't sell yourself short. Gucci casts all types of people.
It does. That is true. I could be possibly, and I have modeled before, actually.
See?
For
model what? Model airplane? Model? Model train?
I'll tell you my modeling
Model
story
citizen?
real quick. Levi's, $500 for to model this pair of jeans. I got up there last. The guy was like, "Oh fuck, we forgot a pair of jeans for you." Made his wife take off her jeans. I had to put them on.
You modeled ladies' pants?
They were old timey Levi's, so I think they were genderless. I think they were kind of men's pants, but she was wearing them. She was not my size though, and so I'm wearing these crazy fucked up old timey Levi's jeans. And the guy's use this banana as a gun, and so I'm pointing a banana as a gun at the camera.
Here's a tip. If a photographer ever gives you a
German
funny prop?
I don't know, man.
You never use that
I
in a
never
photo
modeled
shoot. You
before,
never
sis.
use that in a
How
photo
did-
shoot.
how was
Wait,
I
so your
supposed to know
only
that?
modeling gig was too tight ladies' pants?
They weren't tight. They were too tight around the thing, but they were like around my waist, but they were like balloon pants
like
below.
culottes.
Or
Wait,
LBC,
so
right?
What's up?
LBC.
I don't know that. Oh, Levi's vintage. Yes, they were Levi's vintage. The guy gave me
women's culottes is what you
culottes.
modeled.
Yeah. They gave me those. And then I looked, and it's all a bunch of people I know in this lookbook, and they all look handsome and beautiful and et cetera.
Yeah, and
and
you're
they're
the
holding the
asshole.
fucking banana like a gun.
Yeah, you're the clown with the banana with the prop.
$500 though. $500. And then the guy, he was German. And
Oh, there's your
I'll
problem.
tell you a story afterwards. Really funny interaction with him later. Anyways, I don't know where I was going with that, but I'm looking at this fucking guy and I'm like, you are ugly. And I'm like trying to get him to stop talking to this woman, but I'm so floored by how fucked up he looks. And then I see his fingers. And his fingers, no shit. Have you ever walked in a bathroom? Don't listen to this part, Liz. Young Chomsky, I'm addressing only you. You ever walk in a bathroom at like a facility that is mostly used by men's and some old fuck had not flushed the toilet, so there's just a nasty, massive turd in there?
Yeah.
And that similar feeling of like kind of jumping back and be like, even though this happens in this bathroom sort of naturally, I don't want to use this toilet after this, even despite the fact that I can flush it.
Yeah.
That's how I felt looking at his fingers. It was like 5 pieces of shit clutching this fucking phone. They were massive, like logs. And he starts asking me, do you support Hamas? Do you support Hamas? And I'm kind of fucking with him. I was like, no, I'm a Zionist. I'm just rude. I think you're ugly. And so I'm confronting you about that fact. He starts asking me about my dick size. He's calling me all sorts of names. And I'm like, I just don't think you should talk to that lady. I think it's weird that you're approaching this woman in the park. She doesn't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that just even as you politically disagree with somebody, as a rule, I think as a fucked up looking, possibly monstrous, of alien origin type of individual, I don't think you should be approaching women in the evening at a park who are sitting by themselves. Now he's filming me. I'm like, okay, film me. Great. Wait, what are you going to do? Make me put a banana gun at you? And he splits. But I took a couple pictures of him just because I was like, I can't believe how this dude looks. I post the picture, or I have our social media catamite post the picture on the TrueAnon Instagram later. And a freelance journalist writes in and he's like, dude, I know who this is.
Who was it?
I don't want to say. Well, because first of all, he didn't give me his name. He just said he was a freelance journalist, and he was like, I'm using a burner account. So I don't know his name. But he's like, check this out. And he links me to this story. The disturbing story behind NYC's revenge porn perpetrators. And who do I see in the middle of this very New York Post style graphic is our good friend, Mr. Ross Jiminy Glick, the fellow who was filming me in the motherfucking park. Now, Liz, would you read the beginning of this article for me?
When a Manhattan CEO logged onto her company's Instagram account last February and saw a nude photo of herself, she panicked. The 39-year-old exec hastily deleted it, but within moments the image was reposted. Then it was on her company's website and soon her personal Facebook page. Over the next month and a half, no matter how many times she changed her password, nude photos of her began popping up on her other social media accounts and even made it onto her company's Twitter page. Quote, I'm a single mom living in New York City. I'm a business owner. What did they want from me? What's next? The woman, who asked not to be identified, told the Post. It turned out that the accused culprit was the woman's 49-year-old ex-boyfriend, Ross Jiminy Glick, and, thanks to New York's new revenge porn law, the former beau was arrested. Glick, busted by NYPD detective Dennis McCarthy, whom the woman calls her hero. God, you know, the New York Post, so I got to put something like that fucking in there. Was charged with unlawful use of a computer and unlawfully posting the lewd images. He ended up pleading guilty to second-degree harassment, a violation, and paid a fine.
So this is the character that is walking around filming these women asking, do you support Hamas? Do you think that rape is okay? Do you support Hamas? Blah, blah. And I couldn't believe it. And I look into this guy a little more. It's a sad life he's lived. It's I think his like profile says like faith, fitness,
Father Fitness Food.
father, fitness, and food. I'm like, all right.
Father Fitness is a crazy ass priest name.
There's not a lot on this guy in the. It seems like for a guy who's like a marketing, styles himself as like a marketing guru, he hasn't done a very good job. There's some stuff about how he called Aristotle the first guy to use social media that I found from 2012.
Incorrect.
There's a wedding announcement that describes in the wedding announcement how fat his fingers are. But, I find
Really
this...
tall collar that he's wearing in this New York
he's wearing
Post.
a cravat, Liz.
Well, the cravat I noticed, but why is the collar so...
Well, I gotta say, what
is that?
What I was shocked in this image is how badly they've edited the gentleman on the left. If you look at the bottom of his torso, they just like he's got two collars because they couldn't
you're
clone
right.
tool. It's very bad. But,
You're
he's
right,
got a
he
cravat
does.
going on, and
But what's with the collar on his shirt?
well, which part?
Well, he's got...
It's quite tall.
It's a tall collar.
It is, yes, and
It's a
kind of
significant...
his whole. You know what? He looks like the Goombas from the live action Mario
yes, he
movie.
does. He does look like a live action Goomba in person. So he's obviously been on that Wegovy shit, but he's much skinnier now. Which apparently he tried to open a vegan alternative to Shake Shack a couple of years ago, which I believe has failed.
Ludicrously capacious collar.
I know, just like what is it? And it's vegan. Like vegan fast food is like probably worse for you than real fast food because it's just all like fillers and shit like that.
Fast food.
Oh, I don't eat fast food, Liz.
I said all vegan food.
Yeah, well, not like a salad, but this cat is out of his mind, and I'm like, I find his social media stuff. It's all like Michael Rappaport, Shai Davidai, whatever, and then I make a post at him, and then he starts just going crazy on me, and he eventually posts this video. I'm gonna say 40 times.
Penis, you little angry little imp.
My penis
You
is
little
none of your
angry
business.
little imp.
I have an inch-long penis.
So why are you here for? You pro-Hamas, or you just in the park, just accidentally marching with these idiots?
I love these guys. Now, he seems to be under the impression that I'm actually admitting to having a 1-inch penis, which I will never admit to actually having a 1-inch penis.
I mean, you are saying it, though.
I mean, I have a 1-inch penis, but I'm not admitting to having a, you know what I mean? There's like a distinction there. And has since spent like the past like 48 hours telling people she dropped the charges. But
Which
I'm
is
also
a crazy ass thing to tweet. She dropped the charges is not
You
like
don't
that
wanna
doesn't
be-
defend. That's not like a great like defense, even if you think it sounds like it is.
It is one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen in my life. And the fact of the matter is this guy set out that day to videotape as many women in this park as possible with the hopes of maybe sending the videos to Michael Rappaport, who is possibly the only person with a more fucked up facial features than this guy that I've ever seen.
I really don't need Michael Rappaport tweeting at the podcast. Please.
What is Michael Rappaport? What is he going to do? Say the N-word to us? Like Michael Rappaport is. I can't even. There's like nothing to even say. It's like trying to
all
debase a
been
puddle.
said.
You know, it's been said. There's nothing. It's like what
Also, he speaks for himself.
he speaks for himself. Yeah, just and let him do it. He is a
Yes.
wonderful spokesman for Israel. But this guy set out that day to humiliate and possibly again get fired, try to get blacklisted these young ladies.
Yeah.
And now he's found himself ad nauseum reporting she dropped the charges. Well, New York Post says that you pled to a lesser charge. I'm just reporting what the news says. I have no insight. Maybe post the court documents. I don't know. I'm just saying what the news says. The New York Post says lots of nasty things about lots of nasty people.
They've written a terrible thing about you.
Yeah, but fair enough. They call me a grifter, and I am. Well, that article was that must have been a freelancer. It wasn't up to the New York Post typical quality. I think they've insulted me a couple of times now. But I got to tell you, this guy, this fuck, Ross, if you're listening to this, you literally, I'm giving you this advice from the bottom of my heart. If you have ever, even if she dropped the charges, I don't know, maybe she did. You don't want to be in a situation for the rest of your life where you are videotaping young women without their consent. I just got to say, you want to stand up for Israel, go do it in some other crazy ass annoying way. But this avenue, I think you should close off to yourself. Because it is apparently bringing up some difficult issues from the very recent past from you that it is very clear that you feel uncomfortable with. You are humiliating yourself. you were humiliating your family, and you were only making yourself more isolated from the beauty and good in this world.
Like the orangutans.
Well, that was...
I feel like even if he sent that to Rappaport, like I really don't think it's not really a smoking gun of like Hamas support that he thinks it is.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, I don't know what anyone would do with the video of you saying that.
I was trying to goad him into posting other videos because he only posted like 30 seconds of our
I
like
know.
10-minute interaction. And there's at one point I tell him, yeah, like I'm a Zionist. And I really want him to post that because he got so flustered and confused.
Yeah. Plus, you'd make a lot of cool new friends online
Exactly. Yeah, me.
that you could then double cross.
I could be friends with Michael Rappaport,
Yeah.
who is let's just say has a bit of the Persian Jew in him in his
Certainly not in his
speaking.
whatever he's had plastic surgery was, which I think is nothing.
I gotta say this. I admire the fact that Michael Rappaport's virgin
He's
skin.
definitely had Botox, but that's not. I don't count that.
I would wear a mask
Skin
if I was
mask?
him. Like
Oh,
if I
see.
was him.
You know what's funny? I was like recently, literally just today, was walking to the studio, and on my route to the studio, we walk past a wall of mirrors, like glass that's like just
Yeah.
basically mirrored. And I caught a glimpse of myself, and I was like, you know what would look really good with this outfit is a mask, like a COVID mask.
Really?
Yeah, I had a moment where I was like, I actually could say, yeah, because it was kind of like giving like Japanese, you know?
Oh, so you would be doing it in the Oriental style.
I mean, I don't think I would call it that because that sounds very weird.
No, that's okay. It's if I'm not calling a person.
But
that,
I did
I'm
have a
calling
moment
place
where I was
that.
like, can't you see with this outfit? It would
I could
kinda
see that.
like a
yeah.
black.
You are
COVID
dressed like a
mask.
Japanese.
No, I don't like the way you just said that at all.
Okay, I'm sorry. You are dressed like a Japanese person.
I don't know if that's true.
I think you are. Wait, let me see the pants. The pants,
just
maybe not so much.
baggies.
No, the pants, but from the
wider
waist
still.
up, from the waist up, it's a canoe.
It's just
we're
a
in
t-shirt.
Konnichiwa territory.
Oh my god, you don't know what you're saying.
What are you talking about? I'm one of the most premium white boy dressed as like an Asian person people ever, but old style Asian person. Old style, not the.
We need the more frog jackets.
I started watching that that HBO show, The Sympathizer. I watched like a couple episodes of
What
it.
is that one?
It's all right.
That's a crazy ass name for a show. The Sympathizer.
It was like a.
When do they,
it was
do
like
they
a very
do
famous
the
book.
Empathizer? I'm gonna do that one.
Yeah, the Empathizer, the Equalizer. The book was all right. It
Empathizer
was,
would be
I
really
generally
good.
don't like a lot of
Barely
new
know
books. I
her.
read in like a day. It's a quick read. But they had like an Orientalist professor in the show, and I was looking at him. I'm like, dude, this guy is kind of real like me. Like this is how my apartment looks. It like looks like I have all of my like.
It's kind of more. Your apartment's very much like a den.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's very.
You have a lot of like the trinkets I've picked up on all of my
I
escapades.
have a lot of trinkets I picked up. I have a lot of accoutrements that I've acquired due to episodes that we've done. I have goods from Travels to the Orient.
Yes.
And I decorate my apartment in the style, yes.
Yeah, you walk in and you're definitely like, this is someone very worldly. As
Yes.
in they've traveled the globe.
Well,
and they enjoy searing duck for lunch.
I don't sear, I didn't say this on air, but I want to clear it up now. I don't eat duck for lunch.
But if you did, I think that's fine.
Twice a week, I do indeed, for $8, buy a giant bag of duck livers at the farmer's market every weekend. And yes, sometimes
really
I go
good.
to the farmer's market.
That's good for you. I go to the farmer. What are you talking about? I always go to the farmer.
Well, it seems like you're making fun of me for the things that I eat there. And
What
I
I do
buy
now
duck
is just
liver
go to the market at the farm.
because I don't know how to drive.
No, I'm saying what I do.
Oh, you do. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
Wow,
I
God
thought,
forbid
you
I
were
say
being mean
something
to me
about
my eating
myself.
habits. You were being mean to
Not
me.
like anyone else shows any interest.
What do you eat?
No, you don't get that.
You don't?
You don't get that from me.
I'll find out. I sear duck liver twice a week for lunch. It's 90 seconds. It costs $8. It's $4 a meal. It's really good. You just put balsamic and shit on it. You can eat it on a salad or some motherfucking couscous. I'm not a very good cook, but it makes me feel It makes me feel like I am an okay cook when I cook it, even though it's literally simpler than almost anything else you can make.
I think that's great.
Yeah, and I like liver. I do eat liver. That's a lot. I ate liver this morning. I ate liver yesterday.
And you hardly know her.
duck. I think it tastes good, and I believe that I gain power from it. With that being said,
Wait, would you say you're kind of like a king of it?
I would say I'm more like a liver duke.
Ew. The
No,
liver duke?
A liver duke, yeah.
That's awful.
What are you talking about? That's a perfectly
liver
fine thing to be
duke.
about liver. I'm a liver duke.
You following the ancestral tenets?
I'm following the ancestral tenets.
Different ancestors, though.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my ancestral tenets. I'm following them. Is there something wrong with
Your
that?
ancestors had tenets.
I like you. I can't eat liver. I like eating liver in my apartment by myself.
I'm Liz.
My name is Brace, and I'm not ashamed of my lifestyle. We are, of course, joined by young Chomsky, who also supports my lifestyle.
The lifestyle.
The lifestyle. Yes, and yes, I'm a swinger. Yes, I eat food. Yes, I'm a swinger. Yes, what am I?
Yes,
I'm
I eat
5'1".
food.
Yes, I have a small penis. Yes, I am gay. Yes, I am fucking. Yes, I fucking. Who did I say I look like? Yes, I look like Basquiat. I'm all of these things. I am every woman. I'm every man.
I am a Muslim. I am Jewish. I am black. I am gay. I am disabled.
A bitch, a lover, a child, and a mother. Sinner
Yeah.
and a saint. Come on, someone here finish me off.
What's going on?
No, I would not feel ashamed.
Oh, I will not. I do feel shame though.
God damn it.
I mostly feel shame.
This is what happens when you podcast with two boys.
I'm sorry.
And this has been TrueAnon. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein.